In this demo, we're going to talk about caching. It's part of the WCS, WebDNACodeSparker framework feature, which I called static page caching or URL page caching. Anyway, whatever. It's caching means that instead of going to disk and getting some information, or in the case of dynamic environments, instead of recalculating everything dynamically again before we hand the content to the user's browser, let's just get it in its already calculated state. So in this case, it means, say for example, in our Appleseas demo website, all right, we click a link, it loads a controller, it loads the logic in the controller fires, it loads a view file, spits out the stuff, and it may have to go to the database to get records. It may have to do a fair amount of stuff that takes a while, and then finally display the web page to the user. Well, if you've got a dynamic site, which shopping cart, whatever, real dynamic stuff happening, and you need that to happen, then fine. But what if you just got a site that just displays a lot of static stuff, or you've got parts of your site are dynamic and parts of your site could be static, or at least they could be static most of the time, and you could just generate the content once in a while. So this caching system allows you that flexibility. Okay, you can make it so that the content comes from a pre-built static web page instead of recalculated from the controller and the database and etc. So let's just take an example. All right. Right now, caching is off. So every time I click any link, all the files involved load. The controller, view, model if it's there, blah, blah, blah. And if caching was turned on, then when I visit a page, it would write that file out to disk, in its state that it was in when the user hit that page. And it would be unique as per the URL. Okay, so like this page is the domain. Remember from the other demos, the MVC demo and the URL routing demo, I have this demo website, Appleseas website, configured such that it treats all of that as if it was the domain. The domain, of course, is just this, WebDNACodeSparker.com, but I didn't want to go make a separate whole website with buy another domain and hassle with it. Just for this Appleseas demo, so I stuck the Appleseas demo in a subdirectory off of the main directory for the WebDNACodeSparker website. So just for the purposes of this demo and all these demos, assume that all of that is the domain. Okay, in your configuration file, you can configure it so that it knows where the domain stops and where the rest of the URL starts. So these URL segments are what makes this page unique, per this website. So if I hit this page while caching was turned on, a file would be created in the caching folder, and in there there'd be a food folder, and in there would be a file named recipes, just recipes. So the next time a user comes, say 1 minute later or 2 microseconds later, if it's a really busy site, a user comes along and asks for the same page at the same URL. Then if the caching was turned on, what it would do is we'd look in the caching folder for a file already existing, which is in the caching folder in the food folder and named recipes. And if it found that, it would serve that static file up off the disk rather than regenerate the file dynamically from all these, under the hood files, the controller and the view and the model and all that. So in the case of a really busy site or a really code intensive site where you can afford to serve up a cached pages, it will do so if you turn it on. And it's not just a toggle on off, it's also fine-grained down to the minute. So you can, and also fine-grained down to the controller. So you can have caching on in general, but certain controllers are told to not cache and other controllers are told to cache. So for example, if you've got a back-end administration CMS, you don't want to cache that stuff because it's got to be dynamic so that the person can load the content and change the content. Forms in general need to be not cached because if they submit the form, the landing page, if it's cached, it's static, nothing happens. No form data is saved, no emailed, no databases are updated. You can't have that stuff just, stripped out. So you need those kinds of functions, pages, controllers to not be cached. So you've got the control. So make your stuff that you can afford to cache in a different controller from the stuff that you cannot afford to cache. So you can keep this all straight. And furthermore, it's fine-grained down to the minute. So you can say, for example, cause a cache page to exist for, say, 5 minutes or 1 minute. And then after that time period that you specify, after 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever, it will consider that cached file expired, and it will generate a new one. So if you want it to be cached, but every 5 minutes or every 20 minutes or once a day, you want the content to be updated in the cached copy, it will do so. The user will come in, the time will be checked, what time is it on the server compared to when was the last time that cache file was updated. It'll compare the times, it'll calculate the difference. It'll say, oh, it's been 30 minutes since the cached file was generated, and this controller has been marked as its cache files are only valid for 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and update that, and it'll do so. It'll overwrite the cache copy with the new copy and serve up what was generated, and then that new cache copy will live for 20 minutes if you have it set for 20 minutes. So it's quite flexible. You can really have control. And without any more talking, let's just see an example. All right, so we're going to say in this demo site we want to cache all the pages in the food controller. Okay, that means I believe the default is that. And so when there's no controller specified, I'm pretty sure it loads the food controller. And it also means the menu items. See, food menu. I'm clicking this link. Random samples of the menu. Oops, I gotta turn this debug stuff. Back to menu, and the other one, not random, but the other one. Also recipes. Random. See, all these have food. That's what I'm trying to determine. Which ones use the food controller? Recipes and the other one. Current season. Okay, so these are all food controller. Employment, hours, store locator, map, site map, legal, contact. These are all using different controllers, not the food. So say we want all the food ones, all the pages generated by the food controller to be cached and nothing else. So the first thing we need to do is we need to come into our master config file for the environment that we're in, and that's a different demo where we talk about environments. So the config file for the remote production, because this is the live website, the production environment, and we come down here. See, from here down you can set your own custom configuration, but this stuff up here is used by the system. These are your paths. We'll talk about this in the how to install video. You have to mess with these paths. But then right here, you don't want to mess with these variable names, but you do want to change their values as you need. So this one, WSC config global caching. This is for the whole website, as long as you're using this environment, the production environment in this case, is off. So first of all, we need to turn that on. So we copy that, paste, upload. Okay, now caching is on. And we said we wanted it to be for the food controller. Go to the top, and up at the top of this, of all controllers, should be configuration stuff that's specific to the controller. And here we've got this one. Allow cache this controller's page. Yes, that's what we want. So the other ones, human resource controller. Let's say human resources should not be cacheable, and the info controller files, pages should also not be cacheable. And I need to save those controllers. So I'm going to open up the browser, the FTP. Go to controllers directory, which is here. Update the info controller to not be cacheable. Update the human resources to not be cacheable. And just to make sure, the food controller, which is cacheable, make sure it's up. Okay, and global caching is turned on. Okay, now in the FTP window, we've got this window here, this one, open up to demo site, the WebDNACodeSparker framework directory application, WCS static page cache. Okay, this is the folder where the static page cache files are actually written. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. All right, there's nothing in there. And before you see this in action, let's do one more thing. Let's turn on debug stuff. Show debug output. We'll say true. The config file. Show all vars and debug. No, we don't want the full debug. We just want the partial debug. And this is a config file, which goes here. Oops, I gotta save it first. Okay, so debug is on partially. Caching is on for the food controller, and this should be, and also in the food controller, not only is it on, it's specified for the amount of time. And you'll be surprised at first that this looks like a comment because it's wrapped in WebDNA comment. And my syntax highlighting in this text editor, BBEdit, is marked at red, which it does when things are a comment. I have it set up that way. So you think this is an irrelevant bit of code, right? It's not actually. This is important. This is one of those comments when you, even if you don't care what it says, you don't want to delete it because it's actually setting the number of minutes that this controller, its cached files will exist before they expire. So I've got it set to 1 minute. All right. I'm also going to turn on my seconds in my Mac clock. So you see now it's 8:15 p.m. and 36 seconds, 37 seconds. This will help us track what's going on. All right, so food controller files that are cached will last for 1 minute before they expire. Let's try this. I'm going to go to the home page. And the debug data is telling us right here. Page was generated, and this site is hosted in France, so this is European date format. The 28th of January 2012 at 2 a.m. and 15 minutes and 51 seconds. What would have been my 8:15 and 51 seconds New York time, Eastern Standard Time Zone, USA. Time to parse the page, 0.03 seconds. Now let's go look in our cache file. Here. Refresh. And there's now a file in there called default index homepage. Now, if I open up a new browser window and I save what got written statically, hard-coded into this directory on the server, I'm going to save this to my hard drive. Open up a new window, which is my desktop. Oops. Right there, that's what I just downloaded. I'm going to open this, what I just downloaded, which is that static file that just was written to disk in the static cache file folder directory. I'm going to load that in my browser, just to make sure. So here's the dynamic page, www.webdnacodesparker.com. And you remember it was written out at this date and time. Well, then I downloaded the cached file that was generated at that moment and uploaded it, and then opened it in my browser here. See, this is local to my hard disk. File, blah, blah, blah. And look at the date and time. See, it's the same. So that is